Okay, we're here in headquarters for State Senate candidate Pete Harckham. Pete has a lot of experience in the political world and has represented us in the Westchester County Legislature. And so can you give me a bit of your background and why you decided to run for this position?
Sure, thanks for having me. I served on the Westchester County Board of Legislators for 4 terms, flipped a red seat blue, held it for 3 more terms during the Tea Party era. I was a county board majority leader for 2 terms, and then I went and worked in the governor's administration for 3 years. I'm in this race because I'm really disturbed, as many people are, by what's happening in Albany with President Trump and the extreme conservatism coming out of the Congress, and not having a Senate protect New York State. In fact, just the opposite, having a New York State Senate Republican majority fighting for Trump values and not our Hudson Valley values. To my way of thinking, they have abdicated their right to lead. This last year, they couldn't even pass routine bills like traffic cameras for school districts and ministerial home rule tax bills, let alone important issues like common sense gun safety, reproductive health protections, Child Victims Act, or other issues, healthcare reform, election reform. So there's so many issues that they have dropped the ball, and Terrence Murphy is right at the center of that, and that's why I'm running for Senate.
We're happy you are, really happy you are. There's so much, as you said, and this district is a little wacky. You've got a gerrymandered district. It handles Dutchess County, Putnam County, Westchester County. It's all over the place. How can you possibly have your constituents be happy with whatever you're going to do or say?
Well, there are certain issues that are non-ideological. A Child Victims Act, allowing the statute of limitations for molestation crimes to be extended, so when people are adults they can hold their abuser accountable in a court of law, as well as the institutions that enable them. That's not really a partisan bill. Common sense gun safety, like the red flag bill, is not a partisan issue. Even gun owners can find some common ground there. That says that someone can petition a court, the police, a relative, counselor, petition a court to temporarily remove the firearms from somebody who's a threat to themselves or others. And in 45% of these mass shootings, people say in retrospect, we saw this person was disturbed. And in the Maryland newsroom shooting, the woman who was stalked by the perpetrator said, "This was the angriest man I had ever met. My lawyer and I had tried to warn the police about him, and there was nothing they could do." Had Maryland had a red flag bill, 5 journalists might still be alive today. So that's a nonpartisan bill as well. One of the other things that we're talking about is economic redevelopment of our downtown hamlets. We have a lot of vacant storefronts, and it's because our family businesses can't compete with the big box store chains and the online retailers. And so we need to focus like a laser on investing in our downtowns and not the strip malls outside of town, encouraging the box stores to come. But what are we doing to encourage foot traffic back in our downtowns?
Is that purely a landlord issue in terms of the rents, which have gone insane? I know a while back there was this guy who ran in New York, like, the rents are too damn high. I mean, when they're charging $14,000 to $20,000 a month, how could a mom and pop even, consider that?
Part of it is the rents, and that's why we see so many banks and real estate offices. But if you generate the foot traffic, what typically does that are things like housing, restaurants, and you can't do that when you don't have infrastructure. So if you get north of Mount Kisco, many communities don't have sewers, they're on septics. So they can't get health department permits for water because they don't have the septic capacity for the wastewater. So infrastructure is huge in investing in our downtown hamlets and other things, streetscapes, lighting, nice sidewalks, plazas, things that attract people to want to gather as community in our downtowns.
Right, a
What
lot
about affordable housing? Like recently the county was sued. How's that coming along?
Yeah, housing is one of the anchors of economic revitalization. In fact, I come out of the housing world. I was with an organization called A-Home before I ran for the county legislature. A-Home builds and manages affordable housing. And so I've been a housing advocate and proponent, and certainly we need more mixed use housing, life cycle housing for seniors, town employees, people looking for mobility, for opportunity. Our young people, when they come back, can't afford to stay. Our volunteer first responders. You know, we are finding, and if you look at sales, which are down now, in part, large part because of the Trump tax cut, which is now penalizing New York, but also just because of the single family zoning. Younger people don't want that. They want apartments, they want smaller accommodations, they want to be closer to transportation. This younger generation, they're not big car owners. So we need life cycle housing, and in order to do that, you have to have infrastructure.
And speaking of millennials who need to be closer to the action, have you seen an uptick in registration, voting for, you know, that they're registering to vote now because of so many issues?
Absolutely. We saw in this primary, which normally have very low turnout and you can identify the voters, was an explosion of voters, of folks who had never voted in a primary, new voters. With the younger generation, for instance, my daughter's generation, their friends are very concerned about gun safety. The gun violence, the mass shootings are completely unacceptable to them. And they're also really worried about reproductive health care. You know, the Republicans have blocked the Reproductive Health Act in the New York State Senate. Senator Murphy opposes that. Roe v. Wade there's an imminent threat, whether it's Kavanaugh or the next Kavanaugh, maybe in a nicer package. Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. So we in New York need to codify Roe v. Wade to protect a woman's right to choose, to protect the state-of-the-art medical care and the providers who give that care.
Well, where do you stand on open primaries, having people being able to vote on the day of the registration, whether they're Democrat or Republican?
Honestly, in the primary system, you know, I kind of like the system as it is. You know, if you're a member of a party, you vote in that primary. I certainly think that's the way that parties' candidates should be selected. I understand a lot of people don't necessarily want to be a member of a political party, but then that's a choice that you make. So for just nominating candidates, I like the primary system the way it is, but we always encourage everybody to vote. And actually, this election will swing on the independent voters, because the registration is about a third Republican, a third Democratic, and about a third of the independent voters. And so that's where this race is going to swing. So they have great power and great say as to who the next senator is going to be.
Yeah, a lot of the millennials, they're like torn as to where they're gonna put their affiliations, and most of them, and my son's in that category, they're looking for, economic, conservatism, but on the social justice issues, they don't care if, they're for gay rights, they're for anything that has a social justice cause. So I'm wondering where the parties are gonna, especially the Democratic, which is more progressive, is gonna lie. I'm just gonna switch gear a little on what your environmental, how you feel about things like fracking, the Algonquin pipeline, where there was massive explosions in Boston. Gas, they said it's the bridge fuel, but I'm kind of worried that it's blowing up bridges. What's your position on that?
Yeah, I opposed fracking when I was on the county board. In fact, we passed legislation prohibiting the waste from fracking to be treated in any sewage treatment plant in Westchester County. We passed a law banning the brine from being used for de-icing or dust control on our dirt roads in northern Westchester. Passed a resolution against fracking in the watersheds, and this was before the governor had the courage to ban fracking. I opposed the pipeline. Some people thought that natural gas would be the bridge fuel. We're finding now that excess of methane is released, which traps more heat than carbon. Other things like benzene and other carcinogens are released, so there are a lot of health hazards. We don't need the bridge fuel. Wall Street Journal reported a couple months ago that in 2016, private sector investments in clean renewables, wind, solar, were double what they were for all of the carbon-based and nuclear investments. So now that the private sector has seen that it's cheaper to produce a kilowatt of electricity with clean renewable energy, we need to be moving in that direction very, very rapidly.
Yeah, it's a situation that's becoming, more and more. And now Trump signed something that banned, certain regulations on bomb trains, so that it, I mean, these transporting all this, it just, there's no sense. I won't say anything. Be quiet. I'll be. So obviously we're in a big divide here. How, people feel vulnerable economically, physically, emotionally. I mean, I speak to people and their brains are like fried from all this. I don't know where this is all going to go. What's your take on how, your constituents are feeling and what you're going to do to maybe make them feel a little better?
I think you're right, people are numb. Every day we think we've reached a new low with what comes out of Washington, and then the next day it's another low. What we need to do is work in a bipartisan way. When I was on the county board, we spent a lot of time working with our Republican colleagues in a bipartisan way. And when you're an elected official, you represent everyone in your district, not just the Democrats or not just the Republicans. And you need to be out there. You don't hide behind spokespeople. You don't hide in your office. You need to be out there. I had a policy of meeting with anyone, anywhere, anytime, and people need to see you and know that you're accessible. They may not always agree with you, but they appreciate that you're there for them and you're willing to listen to them.
That's a plus. That's a plus. So at this point, anything you can wrap up with in terms of grabbing people to
Yeah,
get
like for
your
instance,
vote?
your use of social memedia, like you were talking about your Facebook page, and maybe you'd like to shout that address out.
Yeah, sure, thank you. All our social is Pete, F-O-R-N-Y, Pete4NY. That's all our social and our website. If people want to go to that website and get information, or Facebook, we have a lot of issue videos on Facebook. If you want to make a contribution, you can go to the website. If you want to volunteer. And one of the things that we've seen in the last couple of weeks is an explosion of volunteers. People are really motivated. They want to get involved. They're demanding change. And by changing the state Senate, that's why this race is very important. With this one seat, we can change the state Senate from Republican majority to a Democratic majority, and we can get some of the things accomplished that we talk about, like the Red Flag Bill, Child Victims Act, reproductive health, health care, election reform. There's a whole lot we can get done.
Do you tweet at 3 in the morning like the president?
Yeah, I'm sleeping at 3 in the morning.
That's a good thing. All right, well, thanks so much for talking to us, and we're hoping November brings something good, because we need it.
Thank you very much.
Great.